Headphones on, but... Hey guys, tonight we begin with something quieter, colder. A story that doesn't shout but lingers, like breath on frost, like a memory someone tried to erase. You probably think you know what a Soviet Gulag was. Some frozen prison camp, barbed wire, a few sad bowls of soup, maybe some snow. But let me ask you something. Do you know what it's like to work 16 hours a day, moving rocks back and forth until your bones go numb? Do you know what it's like to sleep beside another man's dying breath and wonder if you'll inherit his spot not because you deserve it, but because his body gave up before yours? Do you know what it's like for a piece of bread to become a currency, a weapon, a final act of dignity? Most people think the Gulag was just a prison with extra snow. It wasn't. It was a factory, a machine calibrated to extract the final flicker of usefulness from your body, then erase your name like it was never written. And tonight, you're not watching from the outside. You are inside. You are not a viewer. You are a number. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's step quietly into the cold. Congratulations, you've just been arrested. You don't know why, no one tells you. It's 4:07 in the morning. The knock is sharp 3 quick strikes. Not angry, not desperate. Official. Your wife is still asleep beside you, or maybe she's pretending. Your daughter stirs, murmurs your name. By the time you open the door, they're already inside. 2 men, grey coats, blank eyes, NKVD. One of them sets a sack down on the floor and speaks without emotion. 10 minutes. You're not sure if it's a threat, a courtesy, or just the procedure. 10 minutes. To pack your life, to unbecome everything you've spent decades becoming. You reach for your coat, the one that's too thin for January. You pull on boots still damp from yesterday's snow. You reach for your family photo, your wife on the beach, your daughter laughing in motion blur. The officer shakes his head. No personal items. You look at him. He doesn't blink. Your daughter is awake now. Her eyes meet yours. And suddenly, you understand something you didn't before you're already gone. In the hallway, the van is running. Black, windowless. Quiet. Inside strangers. Men sitting shoulder to shoulder. No one speaks. No one moves. You sit. The door shuts. The engine growls. And just like that, you no longer belong to yourself. No name. No charge. No explanation. Just numbers in a notebook. Just breath in a van. Just the sound of wheels rolling towards somewhere that no one returns from the same. You close your eyes. You don't pray. You count. Because in 10 minutes, you stopped being a person. And in the Gulag, that's the most merciful part. You're asleep when the knock comes, not the kind of knock that waits for a response, or belongs to a neighbour who forgot their keys. This one breaks the night open like an axe splitting wood. 1 sharp crack, then 2 more. You don't need anyone to explain what it means. It's 4:00 in Moscow. Winter still clings to the streets like a wet shroud. Somewhere outside, a black van idles with its lights off. You sit up, confused, adrenaline already flooding your chest before you can name the feeling. Your wife stirs beside you. Your children don't, not yet, but they will. There's a moment, maybe 2 seconds, when you still believe it could be a mistake, a misprint, a case of the wrong apartment, but when the door opens, not with a key, but with force, and the men in grey step inside without speaking, that hope dies quietly. No introductions, no warrant, just 2 faces that don't even look at you as a person. You're not someone, you're something. They go straight for your shelves, hands scanning books for underlined sentences, flipping through letters from relatives looking for clues, not because they care what's true, but because they need something to file. The quota must be met. You're number 7 tonight. Your name doesn't matter. Your job doesn't matter. The life you built through 10-hour days, side work, sacrifices, and silence, that doesn't matter either. It was never a question of guilt. You've been guilty since the moment they needed you to be. Your wife doesn't speak. She knows better. Her face is still and white, like it's been drained of blood. The children are awake now, sitting up with wide, Confused eyes. You catch your daughter's gaze and something inside you breaks, not because you're afraid for yourself, but because you know she'll remember this night for the rest of her life, and there's nothing you can do to soften it. The taller officer hands you a sack. You have 10 minutes, he says. Dress. Pack. That's it. 10 minutes to choose what stays behind. 10 minutes to dress for a journey with no destination. 10 minutes to say goodbye without saying goodbye. You reach for your warmest coat. It already feels like a joke too thin, too civilian. You reach for the family photo on the shelf. The officer shakes his head. Not allowed. You try anyway. He takes it back. There's no last hug. No chance to explain. The silence is your only goodbye. And then you're outside. The street is empty except for the van they call the Black Raven. Inside, it smells of old sweat, cold steel, and fear. You're not alone. The van is already half full. A woman in her 30s, her mascara streaked across her cheeks. A boy barely 20. An old man in a wool hat clutches something wrapped in newspaper like it's all he has left. No one speaks, but everyone understands. You're all guilty of the same crime being chosen. The drive is short but endless. Every turn tightens something in your chest. You don't ask where you're going. That's not how this works. You gave up the right to questions when you were born into the wrong time. They take you to a holding facility, not a cell, but a room. Concrete floors, 2 chairs, 1 table bolted to the ground. The bulb overhead hums, swinging slightly. You're left alone for an hour, then 2, then the door opens and a man walks in with a file and a tired face. He doesn't sit, he doesn't smile. He asks you to sign a confession. You haven't read it yet. The charge is espionage, counter-revolutionary thought, undermining the state. It's 3 pages of nonsense, and yet your name is printed at the top like it belongs there. You ask what happens if you don't sign. The man doesn't answer. He just looks at you like you're wasting time, his time, not yours. The next day, you're asked again, and again, and again, sometimes gently, sometimes not. They keep you awake, they keep the lights on, they make you cold, then they make you sweat. Someone slaps you across the ear. Someone else shouts 3 inches from your face. They ask the same questions over and over until you don't remember what words mean anymore. Eventually, you sign. It's not a decision, it's an erosion, like water wearing down a stone. You write your name at the bottom of the page, and for a moment, it feels like you're watching someone else's hand. Later, they call it a trial. 3 minutes. A man in a coat reads your confession aloud. No one looks up. No one argues. Then someone stamps a paper. 10 years. Corrective labour. They escort you out like a package marked for delivery. And just like that, you're no longer part of the city. You're part of the machine. What hurts isn't the sentence. What hurts is that it was all a formality. There was never a point when it might have gone differently. The gears had already turned. The doors had already shut. You weren't arrested for something you did. You were arrested for being arrestable. That's it. And as the train waits somewhere outside the city cattle cars already groaning with the weight of other lives, you stare at the floor and feel something slide out of you that you didn't know you were still holding on to. The belief that life makes sense. That belief is gone now. The man beside you whispers, "Don't talk. Don't ask. Don't cry. Save your breath." You nod, because he's right. You're not on a journey. You're already in the sentence. And the only question left now is whether you'll survive it. They don't tell you where you're going. They never do. You're herded into a courtyard just before dawn, blinking against the pale light. There's frost on your eyelashes, and the wind finds its way through the seams of your coat, the one you thought was warm back home. A dozen men stand beside you. Some are still trembling from interrogation. One man looks like he hasn't slept in a week, maybe longer. His face is grey, eyes glassy, lips cracked. The guards bark orders without looking anyone in the eye, hands up, hands down. Form a line, now another. You shuffle forward, slow as cattle, toward a train that squats on the tracks like a steel animal. There are no windows, just a single rusted door. Someone behind you whispers cattle car. Another answers, no, cattle get straw. You step inside and feel the truth of it. The air is sour, old wood, dried urine, sweat. There are no seats, just a filthy plank on one wall, a hole in the floor for a toilet, and nothing else. Someone has scratched words into the boards near the door. The names are faded, Some are crossed out. There are 80 of you by the time the door slams shut. 80 men in a space meant for maybe 10 animals. The walls are close. The roof feels low. You can't sit unless someone else moves. You can't lie down unless others let you. So you stand pressed chest to back, shoulder to spine, cheek against a stranger's coat. When someone breathes, someone else exhales. It's hard to say when the train starts moving. There's no whistle, no announcement. Just a jerk forward that topples 2 men near the hole in the floor. Someone helps them up. No one speaks. In the first hour, people try to arrange themselves standing, squatting, leaning against the walls, but there's no order, no air. It's too cold near the walls, too hot in the middle. The smell starts to change. After 3 hours, the silence starts to crack. One man begins to sob. Another begins muttering to himself. Still others just sway in place with eyes half closed. Someone coughs, and no one says bless you, at 6 hours. Someone faints, at 8 hours. The fights begin not with fists, but with elbows, shoves, glares. A man drops from exhaustion, and another yells. Make room for the living, not out of cruelty, but necessity. The man is dragged toward the corner and left there, limp, his coat now a cushion for someone else's spine. By nightfall, the car has its own ecosystem. The dead are silent and slumped in the far corner. The strongest form a cluster near the hole in the floor, where there's marginal airflow. The rest of you float in a human tide, leaning on each other like broken pillars. There's only one small slit in the side of the car, covered in bars. Through it, you see nothing but blurt trees, then snow, then nothing, no sun, no stars, just darkness and metal and body heat. The train doesn't stop that night. Someone dies around hour 12. No one says anything. No one moves. His body just becomes another weight, a piece of cargo to navigate around. You discover that time disappears in places like this. There's no day, no night, just motion. The only clock is your thirst, your legs, your hunger. You haven't eaten since the holding cell. Your stomach gnaws at itself like a dog tied to a post. When the train finally stops at some godforsaken outpost in the snow, the guards open the door just long enough to let in freezing air and throw in a wooden bucket. Water. It smells like iron and wood. Tastes like rust. There's not enough for everyone. 12 men fight over it. You don't try. You lick the condensation on the metal wall instead. You're not alone. Others do it too. In the corner, a man scoops up slush that's blown in through the slit and holds it to his lips like a sacrament. When the bucket is empty, they shut the door again, and the train moves on, and the second night you sleep standing up. Not because you want to, but because you have no choice. You and 3 others lean into each other like felled trees. When one shifts, the others adjust. It's a crude ballet of exhaustion. If someone falls, there's no getting back up. By the 3rd day, the car smells like something you didn't think a group of people could produce. A mixture of excrement, sweat, sickness, and fear. The kind of smell that makes you forget what clean air was like. It becomes normal. It becomes your world. You learn new rules. Don't speak unless necessary. Don't look anyone in the eye. If someone dies, you drag them gently. Don't step on them unless you must. Someone tries to pray. He's quieted quickly, not by a guard by the other prisoners. Praying feels like asking too much. On the 5th day, the car stops again. This time, longer. You hear yelling outside, dogs barking, boots on gravel. Then the door opens. You brace yourself for relief. Instead, you get the glare of snow, blinding white. Your eyes burn, your lungs seize from the cold. After days in the car, the air feels like knives. You're ordered out, one by one, like animals. You step down with legs that no longer remember how to hold you. Your knees buckle, you fall. Someone grabs your arm. Maybe they mean to help. Maybe they're using you to stay upright. In front of you, a sea of snow, barbed wire, watchtowers, wooden buildings with black smoke curling from crooked chimneys. A guard with a rifle grins. "Welcome to paradise," he says in Russian. "You'll be here until you die." Then, to his companion, loud enough for all to hear, mostly they die, and you realize the transit is over, but the journey has just begun. You thought the cell was the punishment. You thought the interrogation was the test. You thought the trial was the humiliation. But this is the new baseline. Everything before was just preparation. For this, you try to remember how long it's been. 3 days, 5, 10, it doesn't matter. Because what matters now is simple. You're still breathing. And that makes you one of the lucky ones. For now. You don't walk out of the train car. You fall. Your legs buckle the moment your boots hit the snow. The cold punches straight through the soles and wraps around your bones like wet rope. You try to stand, but your muscles answer in slow motion. One foot slides. Someone crashes into your back. Then you're both down, tangled together in the blinding white. Above you, nothing but sky and smoke and a guard shouting in a voice like broken metal. You've arrived. You don't know where. No one tells you. There's no welcome sign. Just barbed wire, watchtowers, and a row of wooden barracks stretching into the snowdrift. The camp sits like a splinter at the edge of the earth. You can smell smoke, but it brings no comfort. It smells of damp wood, grease, and something else, something like burned cloth and illness. This isn't a prison. It's an outpost of forgetting. A place built not to hold people, but to erase them. You're not alone in this collapse. Others are on the ground. Some crawl. Some are lifted by fellow prisoners who've been here longer and know better than to leave someone lying too long. The guards don't help. They shout. They point. One laughs. A man near you vomits in the snow. The steam rises quickly, then vanishes. The cold is not normal. It's not discomfort. It's assault. You try to breathe. And the air feels like knives in your lungs, like it's punishing you for needing it. In the distance, a line begins to form. Men to one side, women to the other. Those who can't walk are loaded onto wooden sleds, dragged through the snow like firewood. No one asks where they're being taken. The sleds don't turn back. Your coat, which felt heavy in the train, is a joke out here. The wind cuts through it like cloth soaked in gasoline. Your shoes were city shoes, polished once. Now they're stiff with frost. You can already feel the ache in your toes turning into something duller. Numbness is not safety here, it's a warning sign. As you're herded toward the main building, a man in uniform with a clipboard shouts at the line in Russian labour as a matter of honour, courage, and heroism. It's painted above the door in peeling red letters. Underneath, scratched into the wood by a trembling hand, someone has etched 3 smaller words, work to death. No one acknowledges it. You don't need to. Everyone sees it. Inside, the air is warm, but not safe. The warmth makes the cold hurt more. It stings your skin. Your fingers swell. The sudden contrast is worse than the frost itself. A man ahead of you screams when he puts his hands near the stove. He thought it would help. He thought wrong. The room stinks of wet bodies, of sawdust and disinfectant. They process you like inventory. Name, number, profession. You answer automatically, hoping it might help. Engineer, you say. The man at the desk doesn't even look up. He writes something and then says your number out loud. From now on, you'll answer to that. Your name is done. A number survives better than a man does. Then comes the shaving. Everyone! Head to scalp. Men and women. The clippers are dull. They tug. Some guards laugh. Others just do their job with dead eyes. Hair falls like leaves in autumn. Some women cry. A few men do too, but quietly. Next comes the shower. You expect warmth. Instead, you get shock. Boiling water, then freezing. No warning, no middle ground, just agony. Some fall. No one helps them up. You stand there, naked, shivering, teeth chattering like castanets. This is not hygiene. This is ceremony. A baptism into something subhuman. Then clothes. Not new ones. Not even clean ones. Whatever they have. Mismatched jackets. Pants that don't fit. One boot too big, the other too small. You try not to think about who wore them last. You try not to ask where those people are now. Everything is damp. Everything smells of mould, piss, and regret. Outside again. Still snowing. They lead you to the barracks. Long wooden structures with low roofs, dark windows, and smoke rising like warnings. Inside, it's chaos pretending to be order. Bunks are stacked 3 high, 2 sometimes 3 men to a mattress. You step inside and feel the heat of too many bodies, too little space, too much silence. Someone coughs, deep and wet. No one reacts. You stand there with your bundle, unsure where to go, then a voice beside you. First night's the worst. You turn. A man, older, eyes like cracked glass, gestures to a sliver of sleeping space beside him. You thank him. He nods. Don't steal. Don't talk loud. Don't cross the guards. Don't get sick. His rules are simple and terrifyingly final. You lie down and realize how long it's been since your last meal, since a clean surface, since your own bed. Your stomach tightens. Your chest does too, and that's when it hits you. Not just the shock, not just the cold, but the certainty. This is it. This is not the start of a sentence. This is the sentence. You're not on the edge of hell. You're in it. And there's no exit. There's no plan, no lawyers, no appeal. Just this snow, numbers, rations, cold, orders, illness, quotas, boots, and silence. The man beside you is already asleep. You envy him. You turn on your side. Someone's foot is in your back. Someone else is muttering in their sleep. Outside, wind pushes against the wooden walls like it's trying to get in. You've seen prisons in movies. This isn't a prison. This is erasure. Everything you are ends here. And in its place, something new begins. Not life. Not even survival. Just not dying as long as you can manage it. There is no ceremony. No moment of silence. No recitation of charges. No acknowledgement that a life has ended yours. Just the next command. The next shuffle in the snow. The next line you're ordered to enter. Inside the processing building. The warmth is almost offensive. After the bitter frost outside, it should feel like relief. But it doesn't. It feels like betrayal. The air is thick, wet, sour, heavy with the smell of old sweat, disinfectant, burnt hair, something vaguely metallic, a place where humanity is boiled off the body. The guards don't shout here. They don't need to. This part is mechanical, efficient, cold in a different way. You're told to strip, not just your coat, everything. There's no privacy, no curtain. You and a dozen other men undress in silence, some trembling from cold, some from shame. The youngest try to keep their backs to the others. The oldest don't care anymore. One man takes his time, as if clinging to the ritual of undressing is his last act of resistance. A guard smacks him on the shoulder with a truncheon. Faster! You step out of your clothes like a snake shedding its skin and feel the same sense of leaving something essential behind. What's left is not clean. It's not even naked. It's something raw, exposed, unlabeled. You're herded into a narrow hallway, the floor slick with moisture. The walls are mouldy from decades of steam. At the end, the showers. The first stream is scalding. It hits your back like boiling oil. A man screams beside you. The next second, without warning, it turns to ice. You gasp so hard your chest locks up, then heat again, then cold. The alternation is deliberate, it breaks something. Your body shakes, but no one helps. That's not what this place is for. You stagger out, dripping, skin red and welted. There's no towel. A guard throws a pile of fabric at your chest. Uniform, he says, though it doesn't deserve the name. You hold it up, pants several sizes too short. A jacket that smells like mildew and something worse. The boots are mismatched. One leather, one felt, both too stiff. There are no laces. There are stains on the sleeves. You don't ask what they are, or you don't ask anything. The changing room has no mirrors. They don't want you to see what you look like now. Hairless, dressed in rags. Not one piece of clothing belonged to you, and nothing fits. And yet you wear it, because now it's all you have. Next the name, or rather, the loss of it. You're directed to a desk, where an officer sits with a file thicker than a Bible. He doesn't look up when he speaks. Name you give it. He writes it down. Then, without lifting his head. Not anymore. He slides a paper toward you. A number is printed on the top. That's you now. 6 digits. No prefix, no suffix, no meaning. Just inventory. Profession, he asks. You hesitate. You wonder whether to lie, to say you're a doctor or an engineer. You think of Mikhail's warning. Lie the right way and it might keep you inside, closer to warmth, to food, to survival. You answer. He grunts, makes another note. You can tell if your words helped or doomed you. He doesn't say goodbye. He doesn't say welcome. He just waves the next man forward. You're directed through another door. This one marked with something in faded red ink brigade assignment. It means your labour group, where you'll work, how you'll die, inside. Another officer looks you up and down like he's inspecting a sack of potatoes. He assigns you to a barracks number, a brigade number. That's it. No explanation, no instructions. You ask a question, something small, a clarification. He looks at you like you barked. Speak again and he'll double your quota, he says. You nod, you walk. No one explains what any of it means. The barracks, the brigade, the quota. You'll find out, or you won't. Out the door, back into the cold. You clutch your uniform tighter, but it doesn't help. The wind finds the seams. It always does. You're not the same person who arrived on the train. That person had a name, a coat, a voice. You have none of those now. You have a number, and a jacket that doesn't close, and boots that won't stay on if you run, though you won't run. You know that now. You reach the barracks the way a man reaches the bottom of a staircase he's fallen down. Not with grace, just with the ache of arrival. Inside, your bunk is a plank of wood with a thin layer of straw and 2 other men already trying to sleep on it. No one moves when you sit. No one speaks. You lay your arms across your chest to conserve heat. You breathe slowly through your nose to avoid the stench. You stare up at the dark wood slats above you. You think of your name. You try to say it in your head, and it feels foreign, like a story someone told you once. A name is something that belongs to a person, and whatever you are now, you are not that. Night falls early in this part of the world. The sun doesn't set, it simply fades, as if even light knows not to linger here. Inside the barracks, there is no clock, no schedule, only exhaustion. You sit on your assigned bunk top row, third from the stove sharing a single plank of wood with 2 other men. There is no mattress, just straw so old it has moulded to someone else's shape. You feel it dig into your back, your hips, your shoulders. There is no position that feels like rest, just different degrees of discomfort. The air is thick, not warm, just dense. It smells of wool, wet socks, dried blood, old urine, boiled cabbage, and something older than all of that, despair. Not the poetic kind, the literal kind, the kind you can smell in your own sweat. You're still wearing your clothes. Everyone is. No one undresses here, even for sleep. The cold finds every gap. A bare ankle is a luxury no one can afford. Your stomach growls loud enough that the man next to you flinches. You haven't eaten since the train, or before that. You've stopped counting meals and started counting minutes. Your body is screaming for food, and no one cares. Hunger doesn't make you special here. It just makes you like everyone else. You glance around. Some men are already asleep or pretending to be. Others sit up silent, faces turned toward nothing. A few talk in low murmurs, in languages you can't place. Somewhere in the far end, someone coughs, wet and deep. No one responds. No one asks if he's all right. That kind of question doesn't exist anymore. A guard passed by once earlier, banging on the outside wall with a baton. No words, just the sound. As if to remind you they're still out there. You're still in here. The man below your bunk begins to snore. It's a low, vibrating thing, almost a growl. The man beside you shifts his weight, pulling his coat tighter. You do the same. In this place, bodies share heat the way people once shared stories or wine. You can feel him beside you. The press of his shoulder against yours, not intimate, not aggressive, just practical. 2 cold things placed side by side. You close your eyes. At first, it's just blackness. Then the noises begin to separate. A cough, a whisper, a wheeze, footsteps outside in the snow, the hiss of someone breathing through clenched teeth, and then a voice, faint, careful, male, older, is reciting something. You recognize the cadence before the words. Poetry. Russian. You catch fragments. The moon over Nevsky Prospect ice like silence upon rooftops, it's Pushkin. Or Lermontov. You don't know, but you know what it is. You know what it means. A man in this place, this cage of numbers and wool and frostis reciting poetry. In the dark, for no one, or maybe for everyone. He doesn't ask for silence. He doesn't demand attention. He simply speaks, like a man leaving breadcrumbs in the forest. hoping someone else remembers the way home. The barracks stays quiet, but no one interrupts. You lie still, listening, your cheek pressed to the rough wood, your fingers tucked beneath your chin, eyes open, watching nothing, and something strange begins to happen. You feel human again, not completely, not proudly, not like before, but a piece of you returns, the part that remembers beauty, that knows rhythm, that once leaned back in a chair after dinner and quoted a line just to make someone laugh. That part stirs. You feel your body ache toward it like a starving man catching the scent of food on the wind. Not enough to fill you, but enough to keep moving. The man finishes the poem. There is no applause, no praise, just stillness. Then a voice from another bunk adds a line, a second poem, a new rhythm, then a third. Some are shaky, forgotten mid-sentence. Others are whispered in languages you don't understand. But the meaning is clear. This is the resistance. This is the part the guards can't touch. They can take your name, your coat, your sleep. They can assign you a number, a quota, a shovel. But they can't erase a line of poetry once it's inside you. Not unless you forget it yourself. You turn your face toward the wall. Someone shifts beside you. Their breath fogs against your collar. You don't mind. The bunk creaks. A floorboard groans. Then silence again. Not the oppressive kind. This is different. A held breath. A collective decision to let the moment live. The stove clicks once. The fire inside barely gives off heat. But you swear the barracks feels warmer. Not because of coal. Because of memory. You think about your own poems. Ones you've read. Ones you've forgotten. The books that once lined your shelves. The ones they took. The ones they never could. Your mouth moves. Quietly. You whisper a single line. Not for anyone else. Just to see if it's still there. And it is. Somehow, it is. Your eyes close. Not because you're warm. Not because you're safe. But because you can. Because for this one night, your first night in this place, you haven't vanished. You haven't been erased. You're still here. Thin. Cold. Numbered. But here, and somewhere behind you, a man with nothing left just gave everyone a reason to keep going. There is no wake-up call, no bell, no voice, just the sound of boots slamming against wood, followed by the blunt crack of a baton against the doorframe. 1, 2, 3 times. You're already awake. No one really sleeps here. You close your eyes for a few hours, drift in and out, but the cold and the hunger never leave. They buzz just beneath the surface, like low-voltage electricity. Men begin to stir. They sit up slowly, bones stiff, faces blank. No conversation. Just the rustling of coats and the sound of breath turning to fog in the air. You follow their lead, sit up, swing your legs down, your boots hit the floor like bricks. Everything aches your knees, your back, your ribs. You've been still too long, but you haven't recovered. You didn't eat. You didn't rest. You're simply moving because not moving has consequences. Outside, it's snowing again. Not soft flakes, shards of ice, sharp and fast, the kind that cut your skin if the wind picks up. You're handed a shovel. No explanation. Just Brigade 42. Snow removal. Sector C. You nod as if that means something. It doesn't. You shuffle behind the others, boots crunching over packed ice. A guard walks alongside, rifle at his hip. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The camp is larger than you thought. Barbed wire fences stretch in all directions. Watchtowers stand like skeletal trees, each with a shadowy figure at the top. The smoke rising from the chimneys is darker today, thicker. You arrive at a stretch of road leading out to the woods. The snow here is piled waist high. Someone barks. Start, and that's it. You begin to dig. At first, you try to do it properly. Clean rows, strong throws. You imagine you'll be evaluated, that working hard might matter. But 5 minutes in, your hands start to shake. The metal of the shovel burns your palms. The wind slaps your face until it feels like raw meat. Your boots fill with slush. Your breath comes out in clouds, ragged and short. By mid-morning, your fingers are swollen, your back is stiff, and your toes feel like wood. You don't sweat because your body is too cold to waste moisture. You drink melted snow from your glove. It tastes of dust and iron. You work in silence. side by side with strangers. One man collapses before lunch, face down in the snow. No one rushes to help. A guard walks over, pokes him with the butt of a rifle. No response. 2 men are ordered to drag him off the road. He's left near a fence, half covered in a blanket that used to be white. No one says his name. Maybe no one knew it. Lunch is a tin cup of soup, if you can call it that. It's grey, watery, and tastes like someone boiled cloth in salt water. There's a chunk of something floating in it. You don't ask what it is, you eat it. Every drop. The bread is a hard brick. You chew slowly, very slowly, letting it soften in your mouth. That's another lesson the old man teaches you. Chew like it's the last thing you'll taste. Because it might be, after lunch, back to the snow, the wind picks up, a flurry blinds you as your face stings. You can't feel your fingers anymore. You switch hands often, trying to keep sensation. You move like the others, slow, deliberate. Just enough. It's not about strength, it's about endurance. By the time the guard yells stop, your body is numb, but your heart is pounding. You grip the shovel like a weapon, though you're too weak to swing it. You march back in silence. No one complains. No one speaks. Inside the barracks, someone builds a fire in the stove. The warmth is faint, but real. Your hands tingle as blood returns to your fingers. It hurts, deeply. A burning ache under the skin. You take off your boots. 2 toenails are black. 1 toe doesn't move. Frostbite. Maybe. But there's no doctor, no medicine, no sympathy. The older man sits near you. He hands you a piece of cloth. Wrap your feet. Sleep with them against someone's back. You nod. You don't ask why he's helping. You don't ask his name. That's not how it works here. Respect is traded in gestures. Survival is taught in whispers. That night, you eat your bread slowly. You wrap your scarf tighter. You sleep curled in a half circle with 2 others, sharing what little heat you have. And as you drift toward the shallow, haunted edge of sleep, you realize something. You made it through the day. Not because you worked hard, because you worked smart, because someone showed you how, because you learned the choreography of survival, and because today, just today, you moved enough to not be punished, not enough to disappear, just enough to remain. On the surface, the camp looks simple. You dig, you eat, you sleep, you obey. That's it. But after a few days, after your hands begin to blister, your boots crack, your ribs poke through your shirt, you start to see the cracks in that illusion. This place is not lawless. It just follows different laws. Ones no one explains to you. Ones that could kill you faster than the cold if you ignore them. It starts with something small. A man cuts in front of you in the food line. He doesn't speak, doesn't threaten. He just steps in and gets his ration full warm, slightly larger than yours. The guard says nothing. You frown. You're about to say something when the older man beside you grabs your sleeve. Don't, he says. You pause. He doesn't explain. Later, you see the same man. His name is Verona. You learn walk through the center of camp with 2 men behind him. They don't look like guards. They look like prisoners, but they carry themselves differently. Straighter, cleaner, confident. In a way that doesn't make sense here. You ask someone who he is. They lower their voice. Thief. Vori V. Zakon. Thief in law. You'd heard of them. Criminal aristocracy. The Soviet Union tried to stamp them out. They failed. In here, they rule. They don't wear uniforms. They don't carry rifles. But everyone defers to them. Even some guards. Especially the new ones. If Verona doesn't like you, you sleep outside. If he favours you, you get second soup. Maybe real medicine if you're lucky. It doesn't take long to understand this place has layers. Not just prisoners and guards. Not just good and evil. The lines are messier, fluid. You begin to see the categories. The political prisoners. Mostly quiet. Some still believe in a better system. Some don't believe in anything anymore. They're the ones who used to be professors, journalists, ministers. Now, they break rocks with men who used to rob trains. The criminals. Some are petty thieves. Others are murderers. They tend to survive longer. They're rough, but organised. The guards often let them enforce discipline in exchange for loyalty. The collaborators, prisoners who work with the guards. They run errands, report whispers, organise the tool shed. No one likes them, but no one dares confront them either. The ghosts, the sick, the old, the already dying. They float through the camp like bad omens, barely noticed until a body disappears from a bunk. And then there are the specialists, a doctor, a cook, a mechanic, people with useful hands, people the system needs more than it hates. You meet one of them. His name is Isaac, the camp doctor, or rather, the man assigned to dress wounds and mix herbs until a real doctor is sent, though none ever are. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't look away either. He treats a frostbitten finger without asking who you are or why you're here. Just nods, mutters something about circulation, and presses a warm cloth against your hand. You'll keep it, he says. If you stop being stupid, you thank him. He shrugs. Later, someone tells you Isaac has been here longer than anyone. He's treated more men than most guards have buried. No one touches him, not even Verona. Not because of power, because of usefulness. That's the rule here. Not strength, not rank. Value. What can you offer that keeps you alive? What do you provide that someone else might need? And the opposite is true too. If you're replaceable, you're disposable. That realization hits hard. You begin to watch everyone more closely. How they move, how they talk, who they speak to, who they avoid. There's a rhythm to it, an invisible current running beneath the snow in the orders. A man with black market cigarettes always has company. A prisoner who can sharpen tools gets food scraps under the table. A cook trades extra soup for silence. It's a market economy of secrets, favors, and carefully measured generosity. And you're still new, still undefined, still without a tribe. One night, Verona sits near you at the fire. He says nothing for a long time. Just watches the flames. Then, you know how to fix boots. You hesitate. A little. He nods once. Come see me tomorrow. He walks away. You sit there, unsure if that was a threat or an invitation. The next day, you show up at the edge of the barracks. A pair of boots is thrown at your feet. The stitching is torn. You kneel. You mend. Slowly. Carefully. He watches. Says nothing. When you hand them back, he grunts. Later that day, your soup ration is slightly larger, and the man who used to sleep above you is moved to another bunk. You now have space. You didn't ask for it, but it was given, and that means something. It also means you're no longer invisible. That night, you lie in your bunk and stare at the ceiling. The stove clicks. Someone coughs. Outside, a dog howls. And you think about how strange it is to live in a world where the guards wear uniforms, but the criminals give orders, where the law is meaningless, but rules are everything, where justice is a word no one says, but order twisted. Brutal kind still holds. This place is not chaos. It's a system, just one that rewards the worst, punishes the weak, and tolerates the useful. And if you want to survive, you'd better figure out where you fit. Because being neutral here, that's not peace. It's just the space between wolves. The bread arrives each morning, not as a gift, not as nourishment, but as a reckoning. You wake to the same sound boots on wood, orders shouted like threats, the creak of the barracks door splitting open, a guard steps inside holding a burlap sack, the same sack, always the same, inside bread, not loaves, not slices, blocks, dense, dry, heavy as stone, one for every 5 men. No one rushes, no one dares, but every body leans forward, just slightly. Eyes sharpen, stomachs tighten. The guard calls a number, the same number each time. The man who steps forward is the cutter. He doesn't smile, doesn't speak, just takes the bread and a knife so dull it might as well be a stick. Then he walks back to his bunk, sits cross-legged, and begins the ritual. You've seen it now for days. He holds the block like it's sacred. He examines it, measures it by sight. Then he cuts. Slow, surgical, every motion precise. Each slice must be exactly equal. No favour, no bias. A single crumb of fan there's hell to pay. Because bread is not food here. It's currency. It's justice. It's survival sliced into fifths. And if the pieces aren't equal, people don't fight with words. They fight with fists. Or worse. You get your portion. A wedge, dense and dark, the size of a man's palm, maybe smaller. You press your fingers into it. It gives slightly, moist at the centre, stale at the edges. You eat it slowly. That's the first rule. Chew slow, always, make it last. Let it soften in your mouth before you bite. Let the taste linger. You learn to break it into smaller bites. You close your eyes sometimes, so the world disappears and it's just you and the bread. Some men hoard crumbs in their pockets. Others wrap tiny pieces in cloth, hide them in boots, under straw. One man you saw lick the wrapper of someone else's ration. No one blamed him. Hunger does that. It rewrites your rules, redraws your boundaries. It changes what you're willing to do. There's a man named Yuri in your barracks. Used to be a banker. Now he trades buttons for bread. One morning, he offers you a deal. Half his ration for a favor help him fix his boots. Simple work. 10 minutes. You hesitate. Half a ration is a lot. But the moment you take it, you're no longer neutral. You're participating in the bread economy. That night, someone else comes to you, wants a button replaced on his coat, offers a bite, just one. You decline. He stares at you. You think you're better than me. You shake your head. But the damage is done. The next day, your slice is a hair thinner than the others. You notice. So does everyone else. No one says anything. But they saw. You learn quickly every decision here has weight. Eat now, and you might not eat tomorrow. Share, and you might win favor or paint a target on your back. Refuse, and you become suspicious. The bread itself never changes, but what it represents shifts constantly. Its power, depending on who holds it. Its weakness, depending on how you eat it. Some men inhale their ration, fingers shaking, eyes darting like they expect it to be taken. Others ritualize it, cut it into symmetrical cubes, arrange it on cloth, eat with slow, practiced bites. There's a story that goes around. A man in another camp once stole a crumb from a sleeping bunkmate. When the bunkmate woke and found it missing, he reported it. The thief was beaten until he lost a kidney. Then he was made to sleep outside the barracks for a week. In winter, he didn't survive the third night. No one called it murder. They called it order. Bread is order. The weight of it in your hand is heavier than any shovel. It defines alliances, sets pecking order, determines who you trust, who you turn away from. You remember a time when bread was just food, a side dish, something to push aside if the crust was too hard. Now it's the center of everything. You dream about it. Not always the ration. Sometimes loaves soft, white, warm from the oven, sliced with a clean knife, butter melting into the center. You wake up crying once, not from pain, from remembering. You don't tell anyone. They'd understand, but still, they'd look at you differently. Then, one day, something strange happens. You notice the cutter's handshake as he slices, is weak, older now, thinner. The slices are uneven. It's slight, but it's enough. No one says anything, but the energy shifts. 2 days later, he's replaced. No warning, no ceremony. A younger man takes the knife, cuts confidently, measures with military precision. The old cutter gets a new bunk closer to the door. Colder, worse. That's all it takes. Your stomach knots. You realize something terrifying. Competence is not protection. Value is temporary. Favors expire. Loyalty is measured in crumbs, and everyone is watching everyone else. You start saving part of your ration, just a sliver. You fold it in cloth, tuck it into the lining of your coat, not because it's enough to matter, but because it's a signal to yourself that you still have the strength to plan, to wait, to think beyond the next bite. Because in this world, hunger is constant, but the decision who you become because of it, that's still yours. For now, your finger is swollen, purple around the nail, tender to the touch. It started as a cuter splinter from a shovel handle. You ignored it. Everyone has worse, but now it's pulsing, throbbing. You can't grip your spoon without flinching. You try to hide it, because illness here isn't just dangerous, it's political. A man who can't work gets noticed. A man who gets noticed disappears. But you can't hold your shovel today. You drop it once, then again. The second time, the guard glares. You mutter something about cold hands, but he's not fooled. By the third time, the older man beside you leans in. Go see Isaac. You hesitate. Now, he adds, before it gets worse. Before they send you to the sick barrack. You nod, step back from the line. No one stops you. You're not important enough yet. That's your only advantage. Isaac's hut is near the edge of camp. It doesn't look like much, just another wooden structure with a crooked door and frost on the windows. But you feel something different here. Not safety, not warmth, just focus. Inside. It smells of vinegar, smoke, and something sweet juniper. Maybe. A tin stove clicks in the corner. The air is warmer than anywhere else in the camp. Not by much, but enough to feel human. He doesn't look up when you enter. He's sitting on a crate, boiling something over a flame. You wait. That's the first lesson. Eventually, he speaks. Which hand you blink? Left. You say, holding it up. He finally turns. He's older than you expected. White beard, short, clipped, hair thinning at the top, face weathered like old leather, but his eyes sharp, exact, the kind that can read a man's habits before the man speaks. He gestures. You sit. He doesn't ask your name, doesn't care about your crime. He unwraps your hand. The moment the cloth comes off, he frowns. Not in surprise, in recognition. Infection. Deep. If you'd waited 2 more days, it'd have taken the whole finger. You try to speak. He raises one finger. Silence. Then he moves. Not fast, not slow, just with intent. He opens a wooden box. Inside instruments. Not surgical. Not clean by modern standards, but organized. Cared for. A file. A dull scalpel. A pair of tweezers. A strip of linen. A jar. He opens it. A thick paste inside. Smells sharp fat. Herbs. Resin. He scoops a bit out, applies it gently to your finger. It stings. Then numbs. Bare fat, he says. Boiled with spruce and garlic. Nothing else here works. You nod. He begins cleaning the wound. It hurts. He doesn't apologize. You work with your hands, used to. You say, still do, he replies, not looking up. When he's done, he wraps your hand with a precision you haven't felt since before, since hospitals with real gloves and soft lighting. Then he stands. Come back tomorrow. Before sunrise, you hesitate. Should I bring something? He stares at you. No food, no favors. Then, do you know how to tie surgical knots? You blink. No. He nods once. Then you'll learn. And that's the deal. No contracts, no promises, just exchange. You come back the next morning, earlier than asked. He teaches you how to boil water without wasting fuel, how to clean a wound with salt and vodka, how to hold someone still when you pull a tooth, how to check for pneumonia by listening to breath, how to smell infection before it shows. You ask why he does this, because it keeps me alive, teaching being needed. He says it like a curse, but also like a prayer. Others come, quietly, a man with broken ribs, a woman with burns from the stove, a boy with frostbite so deep his fingers are grey. Isaac treats them all, not kindly, not warmly, but thoroughly. He never raises his voice, never explains himself, but everyone listens, even Verona. You see him one day, limping into the hut, says nothing. Isaac gestures. Verona removes his boot. A blister the size of a coin. Isaac treats him like everyone else, but slower. Later, you ask why. Because power hides wounds. So I make sure he remembers the pain. It's the closest thing to rebellion you've seen. You learn more. How to grind tree bark into tea for stomach problems. How to bind a sprain with strips of old cloth. How to make a man forget he's dying just long enough to help him sleep. One day, Isaac hands you a tin bowl. Inside something that smells of onion, meat, maybe even pepper. Eat. Why, you've earned it. You eat slowly. It's the best thing you've tasted in weeks. Not just because of flavour, because it was given, not traded, not stolen, given. Later, you watch him repair a tool for the cook. He doesn't ask for extra food. He doesn't ask for protection. He just hands it back. Is that how you stay safe, you ask? Barter. He shakes his head. I don't barter, I accumulate. What he wipes his hands, not things. Memory, reputation, skills, gratitude. He looks at you. When the food runs out, when the boots fail, when the guards turn, memory is all that's left. You don't respond, but you remember the line. It sits with you. Quietly. Days pass. You keep returning. You're not his assistant. Not really, but you fetch water. You mix herbs. You wrap wounds. And slowly, you begin to matter. Not to the guards, not to the system, but to one man. And that, in this place, is enough. Because Isaac can't fix the camp. He can't stop the cold. He can't change your sentence. But he can save a toe, a hand, a breath, a moment. And sometimes, that's the difference between dying tomorrow and surviving just long enough to see one more dawn. It begins with a whisper. Not the kind meant to keep secrets, but the kind you use when breathing life into something fragile. Something sacred. You're lying on your bunk. Your body aches from the day's work. Your stomach is half full from a soup that tasted mostly of boiled nothing. And your fingers are cracked from the wind. But tonight, something feels different. The air is still. The stove glows faintly. Outside, the wind howls against the walls. But inside the barrack, there's a hush. A held breath. And then, from the darkness near the far wall, you hear it. A voice. Soft. Calm. Confident. I remember a wonderful moment. It's Pushkin. A poem you vaguely recall from school. A poem about beauty. About seeing someone once and remembering them forever. You stop moving. You stop breathing. Others do too. The room doesn't change. The straw still scratches your skin. The bunks still creak, but something has shifted. The man speaking doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't ask for silence. But silence comes anyway. As if everyone understands, this is not just a poem. This is a thread, a lifeline, a door, cracked open, leading out of the camp, into memory. When he finishes, another voice answers. We met once. Long ago. Not Pushkin this time. Lermontov. Maybe. The voices are quiet, but sure. Like musicians warming up, calling to each other through fog. You don't speak. Not yet. You just listen. Because for the first time in weeks, what you're hearing isn't a command. It's not a bargain. It's not a warning. It's language as gift. You turn your head slightly, trying to see who's speaking. But the shadows are thick, and that feels right. This isn't for faces. It's for memory. For rhythm, for something deeper than names. You hear a phrase that makes your chest tighten. He who remembers the words does not die entirely. You don't know if it's from a poem or if someone just said it. Either way, it feels true. The next night, it happens again. But this time, more voices join. Not in unison, never loud, but in threads woven through the dark. One poem leads to another. A fragment of Chekhov. A line from Akhmatova. Even jokes, old ones, remembered from pre-war theatre, and slowly, you realise this is a ritual. Not official, not permitted, but real. You come to call it the circle. No one announces it, no one organises, but somehow, after lights out, after the guards make their last rounds, the air changes, and the circle begins. The men who speak are not all educated. Some misquote lines, some stumble. One man invents poems from scratch, claiming they're lost works. No one corrects him. No one cares. It's not about accuracy. It's about presence. A memory spoken aloud is no longer just memory. It becomes shared defense. You finally speak on the fourth night. Your voice cracks on the first word. You begin slowly, fumbling a verse your father once recited to you after dinner. Years ago. It's clumsy, halting, but no one laughs. One man whispers the correct line when you get it wrong. Another taps his bunk post softly when you finish. A kind of applause. Your heart races. Not from fear, from remembering who you were before all this. A man with stories, with songs, with words. You begin to look forward to it. Each night, after the bread is rationed, after the boots are removed, after the coughing dies down, the silence comes, and with it, the poems. They bring back things you didn't know you missed. Your grandmother's kitchen, the sound of laughter in a hallway, a book left open on a windowsill. Each line is like a match lit in a cave, brief, fragile, but enough to see yourself again. Isaac joins once. He recites nothing, but he listens. You glance at him across the room. His eyes are closed, but you know he's hearing every word. Later, he tells you this isn't for them. It's for you. When your body breaks, let your mind go there instead. You ask, does it help? He shrugs. Nothing helps, but something delays. That's the secret of the circle. It doesn't save you, but it delays the erasure. It keeps your mind a step ahead of the hunger, the cold, the rules. One night, a man recites a soliloquy from Hamlet in Russian. Another answers in Polish, then French, then Yiddish. One voice after another, some fluent, some not. The effect is electric. You realize you're not alone in remembering, even here, even now. The guards sometimes hover outside during circle time. They know something's happening, but as long as no one shouts, no one sings, no one gathers in a visible group, they let it be. Maybe they think it's harmless. Maybe they don't understand that this is the most dangerous thing of all. Because beauty cannot be taxed. Poetry doesn't confess. And memory, spoken aloud, can outlast iron. One night, a guard does enter. Drunk, he kicks a bunk, shouts something about silence. Everyone freezes, but no one speaks, not even to apologize. Eventually, he stumbles out, muttering. No one says a word for a long time after. Then someone, quietly. Then now. You're my enemy, Chekhov. It begins again. No one can stop it. That's the miracle. The circle expands. Men begin writing lines on scraps of cloth, bits of bark, the underside of ration papers, hidden under mattresses, sewn into coats, memorized in pairs, then passed along. You know now, they took your names, they took your families, they took your future, but they cannot take this. This poem, this line, this rhythm, this is yours, even here, especially here. And so each night, under the low roof of the barracks, with smoke in the air and frost on the windows, the circle returns, quiet, unbroken, a heartbeat made of words, and as long as it beats you're still alive. February is not the coldest month in the camp. Not technically. January brings lower temperatures. December, more snow. March, sharper winds. But February is when people begin to disappear. Not all at once, not dramatically, just gradually, quietly. The bunk next to yours is empty one morning. You don't ask why. You know better now. No one speaks the man's name. No one asks if he was transferred. No one checks the infirmary. He's just gone as if the camp has swallowed him and buried the evidence under another fresh drift of snow. And maybe it has. In February, the frost doesn't bite anymore. It seeps. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It wraps around your thoughts like fog dull and wet and heavy. And it brings with it a silence different from the one you've learned to live with. This silence is internal. It lives in your chest, behind your ribs. It comes from men who were once loud, who once told jokes in the lunch line, who once offered you half their ration when yours fell into the snow, who once quoted whole pages of poetry from memory. Now they just lie in their bunks and stare at the ceiling, at the floor, at nothing. You start to see it in their eyes first, the fading, a kind of soft vacancy, not terror, not rage, just the absence of waiting. Because February is when you stop expecting anything. No letters will arrive, no trials will be reopened, no weather will improve. February is when time dissolves, the calendar becomes meaningless. The camp schedule still ticks on wake up, roll call, work, return, ration, sleep, but none of it means anything anymore. It becomes noise, repetition, a rhythm too slow to dance to and too fast to ignore. You try to fight it. At first, you memorize new lines from the circle. You tie knots for Isaac. You keep a tally scratched under your bunk. But soon you forget to scratch it. You forget what day it is. You forget the last time you smiled without effort. The sun doesn't rise anymore, it simply grows less dark. And you realize you're not sad, you're empty. And somehow that's worse. Because sadness is movement. Despair is stillness. You catch yourself doing strange things. Staring at your hands for minutes without blinking. Tasting snow, not for thirst, but for the feel of it. Rubbing your fingers along the wall, over and over, because the texture reminds you of something, but you can't remember what. You're not alone. Others feel it too. There's a boy 2 bunks down who used to hum when he slept. One night, The humming stops. You don't hear his breath anymore. By morning, his body is stiff. No one calls for help. 2 men wrap him in his blanket, lift him out, and place him by the door. It takes them less than a minute. No words, no pause, just a task completed. The snow outside receives him without protest. February doesn't mourn. Neither does the camp. The quota stays the same. The bread rations stay the same. The guards don't comment. Why would they? It's February. People die. That's what February is for. You begin to feel yourself slipping. Not physically, spiritually. You stop thinking about home. You stop imagining what spring might look like. You stop picturing the faces of people you once loved. Their features blur. Your dreams, once vivid, are now just colours and shadows. You sleep deeper, longer, more often. Not because you're resting and because you're retreating. Then one night, you hear something strange. Laughter. Real laughter. Not the bitter kind. Not the broken kind. The sound of someone genuinely amused. You sit up. A man in the corner is telling a story, something about a pig, a wedding, and a priest. It makes no sense, but men are gathered around him. They're listening, smiling. One man even claps once, and for a brief moment, something shifts in you. A spark. Tiny, faint, but present. You move toward them. You sit on the edge of the group. You don't speak, but you listen, and it helps. For a few minutes, it helps. The next day, you find Isaac. You tell him you can't sleep, that you feel like your thoughts are dripping out of you, that you've stopped caring whether you wake up or not. He doesn't give you a speech. He doesn't comfort you. He hands you a piece of fabric. Make bandages, he says. Fold them clean. Store them dry. Why? Because someone will need them. And if they don't, then they'll still be clean. You take the cloth. You fold. You repeat. You stack. And for the first time in days, your hands are busy with something that isn't about you. That night, you sleep. Not well, but fully. You wake with pain in your back and crust in your eyes, but you wake. And that, in February, is a miracle. You begin to notice who's fading. A man who skips soup twice in a row. Another who won't light the stove even when it's his turn. They're slipping. And you, because you're still here, begin to reach out. Not with grand gestures, just small ones. A clean rag placed by their bunk. A line of poetry whispered when they think no one listens. A piece of bread crust, quietly pushed across the table. Not because you're noble, but because they might still come back. And because if they don't, they take a piece of you with them. That's February. It is not loud. It is not cruel. It is a room with no air, slowly filling with silence. And every day you survive it. You've done more than work. You've refused to vanish, even if no one claps, even if no one sees, even if the snow keeps falling and the wind keeps scraping the walls. You're still here, and that right now is everything. It begins with a sound, not words, not orders, a drip, a single drop of water sliding from the roof of the barracks, landing in the mud below with a softness so small, so hesitant, you almost miss it. Then another, and another. And one morning you smell it. The snow is still everywhere, but it no longer bites. It softens. The edges blur. The wind carries something unfamiliar. Wet wood, melted ice, soil, earth. After months of white silence, the colour creeps back in quietly, like a guilty secret. A smear of brown where snow has receded, a shadow of green beneath a log. The frozen surface of the river cracks. Birds return not in flocks, not with song but one at a time. A dark shape overhead, a faint flutter of wings. You stand in the yard with your shovel, and for the first time in months, you feel sunlight on your face, weak, untrustworthy, but real. It reflects off the melting ice like broken glass. No one cheers, no one says spring, but the men begin to move differently. They pause, they notice. They lift their eyes instead of just their boots. Something else happens too. People start remembering out loud, not facts, not events, details. Someone mentions cherry blossoms. You're waiting in the soup line when he says it casually, to no one. In May, The whole street would bloom, like pink fog. You'd walk through it, and petals stuck to your coat. You don't know the man's name, but you remember the image, pink fog. It stays with you. Later, you sit on your bunk, and someone else begins to describe a tree from their village. Its roots would crack the stone. My mother always cursed it, but it grew. Another voice. We had dandelions in the cracks between buildings, little yellow ones. I hated them as a boy. I miss them now. You start noticing them more, these small stories, told between spoonfuls of soup, while patching a boot, waiting in line for the latrine. Each one is a thread, a memory, a seed. You begin to collect them. A man from Georgia describes pomegranate trees. Another speaks of the heavy scent of lilacs in June. Someone sketches a linden leaf in the corner of a ration slip, his hands shaking, his pencil broken. And just like that, the camp becomes a kind of secret garden, not of plants, of recollections. Memory blooms where nothing else can. One night, a man named Artyom speaks during the circle. No poem, just a story. When I was a boy, I fell into a river. Early spring, the ice had cracked and I didn't know. The water was black. My brother pulled me out by the hair. When I opened my eyes, I thought I was dead. But the first thing I saw was a branch above me, covered in buds, tiny, green, just barely opening. He pauses. It was the first time I realized spring could hurt you and save you. No one replies, but everyone breathes differently afterward. That week, you see someone carving into the wall of the latrine. Not graffiti, a vine, winding, stylized, unfinished. The next day, someone adds a flower to it, then a bird, then a sun. It's primitive, childlike, but beautiful. A small rebellion. The guards don't notice, or maybe they pretend not to. The doctor, Isaac, surprises you by giving you a handful of onion skins. Why, you ask? Colour. He shows you how to boil it, how to dye fabric with it. Faded orange, barely visible, but it's colour. You start experimenting. Someone gives you beet juice. Another crushed charcoal. You begin staining scraps of cloth, pressing your thumbprints into them like stamps. You don't call it art. That would be dangerous. You call it marking. Each man makes one, folded neatly, tucked under bunks. Not traded, not sold, just kept. Like proof, like memory in cloth. One night, a man named Pavel sits beside you and whispers, "I saw my mother planting lavender once. I hated the smell. Now I dream about it." You nod. "What colour was it?" He looks away. "I don't remember. Just soft." You give him a piece of dyed cloth, the orange one. He holds it for a long time before tucking it into his coat. "It's not lavender," you say. "It's close enough." He replies. That becomes the phrase, close enough. A sketch of a birch tree on scrap paper close enough. A lump of snow shaped like a lily close enough. A poem that forgets its last line close enough. One day, someone lays a tiny bundle of grass on your bunk. It must have been found near the fence, under the shadow where guards rarely patrol. It's not green, not yet, but it's alive. You wrap it in linen, keep it by your chest. You don't tell anyone. Some things don't need to be shared to be real. And then, as if spring had been waiting for its cue, something incredible happens. A tree half dead, beside the tool shed buds, tiny green nubs. At first, no one believes it. Then they gather to see. Men who haven't spoken in days, guards pretending not to notice. Isaac stands 10 feet away, arms crossed. No one touches the branch and they just look. For 5 full minutes, no one speaks. And for the first time since your arrival, you think, maybe. Maybe not escape, not freedom, not rescue, but something after. Something green, something soft, something remembered. Because now you understand they can shave your head, take your name, make you dig through frost until your joints split. But they cannot stop memory from blooming, not once it's rooted, not once you've shared it, not once it's turned from a private ache into a public ritual. Spring in the camp is not beautiful. It is muddy, incomplete, still dangerous. But it is something, and sometimes something is enough. It was a Sunday. Not that the day mattered, not that anyone marked time by calendar anymore, but you remember it because the wind was quiet for once. The yard was unusually still. The snow was melting in puddles around the edges of the barracks, and the sun weak, pale, apologetic pressed through the clouds for an hour or two. You were walking back from the tool shed, boots dragging through slush, thinking about how water makes even dirt feel alive, thinking about how the melting wasn't progress, it was just another form of discomfort. Then you heard it, faint, thin, high, a note, one single musical note. You stopped walking. Everyone did. You thought, at first, it was a sound from your memory, some cruel echo of a past life, hallucinated out of hunger or longing. But then there was another, a chord this time, wavering, out of tune, real. From somewhere in the centre of the yard, you turned and saw him, a man, thin, older, standing in the open with a violin in his hands. You don't know where it came from. You don't know how it got past the guards, how it was hidden, how long it had waited in secret for the right moment to speak. But there it was, and so was he, playing. Not well, not even confidently. But honestly, it was a folk melody, something familiar and nameless, half waltz, half lullaby. The kind you might have heard drifting out of a window before the war. The kind your mother might have hummed while peeling potatoes. He played with his eyes closed, hands shaking, elbows stiff, but the sound thin and cracked and full of ghosts floated over the yard like incense. Men stopped working. Guards froze. Even the dogs tilted their heads. The melody climbed, then folded back, then rose again. And in that moment, something broke open inside you, inside everyone. You felt your chest expand, not with pride, not with hope, with recognition. The sound of something that was once human, still alive. A man beside you wept, not loudly, just one hand pressed over his mouth, his shoulders trembling like a broken wing. The music continued, for 10 minutes, just 10. But in that time, the yard was not a prison. It was a concert hall and a living room and a field after harvest, a place where people once gathered, not just survived. And for 10 minutes, you were a person again. Then came the voice, sharp, too sharp. Stop a guard, running now, shouting. Others behind him. The man playing opened his eyes. He didn't stop, not immediately. He held the last note longer than it was written, as if to etch it into the walls, into the sky, into your ribs. Then he lowered the bow and said nothing. The guards tackled him. He didn't fight, didn't scream. They broke the violin first, snapped it across a knee like firewood. The sound-splintering wood, snapping strings was worse than the shouts. Then they beat him, not to death, but close. Hard enough to leave a lesson, hard enough that he didn't stand up after. They dragged him away. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was grief. You stood there, all of you. No one moved. No one spoke. And then quietly, carefully someone began to hum the tune. Just the first few notes. Then someone else joined. Another voice. Then another. Not singing. Just humming. Soft. Unapologetic. It wasn't rebellion. It was remembrance. You closed your eyes and hummed too. You didn't know what the song meant. Only that it mattered. That it had existed. And now, because it had been shared, it couldn't be erased. Later that night, you asked Isaac. Why would he do that? He knew what would happen. He didn't answer at first, just stirred his herbs over the flame. Then, because some things are worth being punished for. You nodded. Was it worth it? Isaac looked at you. You remember it, don't you? Yes. Then yes. It was. The next morning, the man's bunk was empty. His name wasn't mentioned. His bed wasn't reassigned, but his song stayed. You heard it days later, someone tapping it with their spoon, someone whistling under their breath, someone sketching the shape of a violin in the dust on the wall. It had entered the bloodstream of the camp, uninvited, unforgotten. And you realised something you hadn't known before. They can break the violin. They can bruise the hands. They can silence the player, but they can't unring the song. Not once it's been heard, not once it's lived. Music isn't like bread. It doesn't run out. It multiplies, especially when it's forbidden, especially when it costs something. And for 10 minutes in that muddy yard, You saw what it looked like to be free not in body, but in expression, not in escape, but in resistance. Not loud, but true, and that truth, though brief, though punished, endured, like a note you still hear, even after it's gone. It begins, as these things always do, with something that looks like kindness. You've just finished another shift on the lumber detail, your hands raw, your breath steaming like smoke from a dying fire when Verona stops you. He doesn't touch you, just steps into your path like fog. He's wearing his usual coat, stitched with the black thread he favours. No guards nearby, no one watching. You're working hard, he says. Too hard. You say nothing. He smiles, not warmly. Like someone tasting soup he already knows is poisoned. Just curious how much. I've been watching. You're careful. Smart. Quiet. You nod. Careful is good. Quiet is better. We need someone like that. That's when you know it's coming. The offer, you don't respond, not immediately. That's part of the game. The delay means you're listening. He takes it as permission, information. That's all. A word here, a name. Who said what they're planning, who's hiding things. Nothing dangerous, just alignment. You exhale, and in return he shrugs. Security, extra bread, less scrutiny. Your boots won't accidentally disappear. Your back won't find a shovel handle in the dark. He grins, and Isaac's herbs. They don't go missing. You understand the game as offering safety, not from the guards, from the others, from hunger, from invisibility, from cold. You could say yes, it would be easy. You just nod, drop a name here and there, let him know who grumbled, who held back during labour, who muttered about quotas when they thought no one was listening. Small things, nothing criminal, not yet, and in return you eat, you live, you last. But then he adds, start with the Georgian. He's been keeping notes. You blink. You know the man he means. A poet. Maybe once. Always scratching on scraps. Always folding them into his sleeve. You've shared soup with him. He taught you a song. You say nothing. Verona waits. Then think about it. He walks away. Your stomach clenches. Not from fear. From possibility. That night, the wind howls through the slats in the barrack walls. Men cough in their sleep. Someone mutters about his daughter. Another moans in pain. The Georgian stirs beside you, pulls his coat tighter. You see the slip of paper in his sleeve as he shifts. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling. You don't sleep. You weigh. Not the offer, the cost, the bread you'd gain, the man you'd lose, the self you'd never get back. Isaac finds you the next morning as he doesn't ask. He just sits beside you at the stove, warming his hands. You look like a man deciding if he wants to be someone else. You glance at him. What would you do? That's not the right question, he says. You frown. Then what is he turns to you, slowly. Who are you willing to live with? He stands, leaves you alone. You go to work. You swing your axe. You carry logs. You eat your ration. You speak to no one. But all day, the question digs deeper than the cold ever could. Who are you willing to live with that night? Verona comes again. This time, he brings bread, fresh, still warm. Last chance, he says, holding it out. You look at the bread. You feel your stomach tighten. You haven't been full in weeks. You imagine how it would taste. You could take it. No one would know. Not today, but you would. And that's enough. You don't say no. You don't say anything. You just stare at him. Then you turn away. The bread stays in his hand. He doesn't follow. You lie in your bunk that night, empty-stomached but full of something else. It's not pride. It's not righteousness. It's not even peace. It's weight. The weight of choosing yourself, even when it costs you comfort. The Georgian still hums in his sleep. You listen, and you know you are still you. For now. There's no mirror in the camp. No glass on the walls. No metal polished clean enough to reflect a face. The only way to see yourself is to guess through others' eyes or your own imagination. But every so often, on a good day, when the frost melts just enough, you catch your reflection in a puddle, a flicker, a face, yours but changed. You see the shadow of who you were, a ghost with hollow cheeks, cracked lips, a smear of soot across the chin. You don't recognize the eyes. They look used, as if they've been stared through too many times by things they never agreed to witness. You crouch beside the puddle, watching yourself, not admiring, not judging, just trying to remember. When did your voice last sound like yours? When did your laugh come from the chest instead of the throat? When did you stop hoping the guards wouldn't notice you and start hoping they simply forgot you existed? Adaptation, they say, is survival. But what if it's also disappearance? You've seen it in others. The quiet erasure of personality. The slow shaving off of anything unproductive. A man who once told stories now only counts bread rations. A woman who once sang now whispers to herself in numbers. A boy who once smiled now walks with his head permanently bowed, as if afraid the sky might see him. You've survived longer than most, not by strength, not by cleverness, by knowing the line. The edge between doing what you must and becoming someone you're not. But it gets harder. Every day. The line fades. The camp doesn't kill you with violence. It kills you with permission. You're allowed to give up. You're allowed to forget. You're allowed to trade memory for safety. And no one punishes you. In fact, they reward it. The less you speak, the more you blend in. The more you blend in, the less you're asked to do. The less you feel, the less it hurts. It's tempting. Some days, you want to fall into that forgetting like sleep, but then something pulls you back. A voice, a colour, a line of poetry, a look. Isaac's eyes when he hands you another bandage and says, simply, they need you. Or the boy in the bunk beside you, who doesn't remember his mother's face but holds your hand when he thinks he's dying. You realise you are being asked a question every single day. How much of yourself are you willing to give away to make it one day further? You've already given some, you know that. The parts that loved music without flinching. The parts that danced in kitchens, barefoot, without fear of being noticed. The parts that used to plan 5 years ahead. Now you think in 5-hour intervals. But some things you haven't given. Not yet. Not your name. Not fully. Even if no one says it here, you whisper it sometimes, into your coat, just to feel it against your tongue. Not your hands. Not the way you use them for work. Yes, but also for mending, for warmth, for lifting others up when they fall, and not your mercy. That, above all, is your rebellion. Because the system tells you only you matter, only you survive. Trust no one, share nothing, stay small, stay invisible. But you still look others in the eye, still nod when someone coughs, still press half your ration into another hand when it matters. Not because you're strong, not because you're noble, because you refuse to become them. Not the guards, the system, the voice inside that says just survive. You want more than that. You want to arrive at the end of this not just alive but recognizable. You want to know, when they finally unlock the gate, if they ever do, that you didn't vanish before you walked free. Not in spirit, not in name, not in conscience. You want to remember you didn't betray that boy with the violin. You didn't forget the face of the man who quoted Pushkin in the dark. You didn't trade your dignity for warmth, even when the frost peeled your skin, and you didn't become what they wanted, empty. That's what dehumanization is, after all. Not screaming, not dying, becoming blank, becoming useful, becoming what they can file away and forget, but you still remember. And so you fold the cloth carefully when you clean the infirmary. You straighten the spoon pile in the kitchen, even when no one sees. You recite your father's name silently before you sleep. Not because any of it changes your sentence, because it changes you. And you know no one survives the Gulag. Not really. Not in the way they mean. Not untouched. Not unchanged. But some walk out with something the frost couldn't touch. Something the hunger couldn't burn. Some walk out with enough of themselves intact to begin again. And when that day comes, you want to be one of them. The guards never noticed when it started. That was the point. There were no meetings. No whispers. No secret knocks in the dark. No maps drawn in dust. Only a shift. So small, it could be mistaken for fatigue. You noticed it one morning. A man, 2 rows ahead in the logging line, took an extra second to lift his axe. Not lazily, not rebelliously, just an extra second. His movement was deliberate, heavy, drawn out like a man savouring a breath before diving underwater. You thought it was just him, until you realised the man beside him was doing the same, and the man behind him, and then you saw it clear as a pattern in frost. The rhythm had changed. The entire brigade was moving slower, not obviously, just enough to be less efficient, and no one said a word. You didn't either. You matched their pace, not because anyone told you to, because it felt correct. And suddenly, the work normally a blur of grunts, crashes, splinters, and shouted quotas became a slow dance. Axes rose and fell like pendulums. Logs were dragged like funeral processions. Snow was shoveled in arcs of practiced inertia. The guards paced. They shouted, but they couldn't point to anything specific. The work was still happening, just not with urgency. It was brilliant, and it was dangerous, because in the Gulag, there is no right to rest. There is only output, and anything that smells like refusal even in silence can get you killed. But this was something else. Not rebellion, not sabotage, just endurance. Together. Unspoken, unified. You learned that Verona had started it not with orders, but with a glance. A raised eyebrow during morning roll call, a half step slower on the march. His men followed, then the others, then you. Even Isaac adjusted. He began his rounds 5 minutes later, let the waiting stretch, allowed the pace to soften. It wasn't laziness, it was strategy. You realized, for the first time, that power here didn't only come from violence or control, it came from rhythm. And now, you had taken it back. Each day, the system demands a pace, a tempo of suffering calibrated to break you. But when you set your own pace, even quietly, even fractionally, you steal time. And in the Gulag, time is everything. A second more to breathe, a second more to see, a second more to remember yourself. You began to feel it in your body. Your shoulders ached less. Your hands bled less. Your knees stopped locking in the night. Men who once collapsed after work now stayed upright. Not because life had gotten easier, because they were no longer racing to meet the stick. They were walking just behind it, never enough to be punished, but enough to survive longer. Of course, the guards noticed something. They always do, but they couldn't name it. The logs were stacked. The quotas met barely. The barracks swept. The soup stirred. Everything appeared the same. But it wasn't because the mood had changed. The camp had found its breath. And breath is the first step toward voice. Not shouting, not demands. Just remembering that you have lungs. That your body belongs to you. One day, a guard tried to break it. He shouted, raged, accused a man of laziness, dragged him out of the line, beat him across the back with a stick. The man didn't fight, didn't scream, but he didn't change pace the next day either, and neither did anyone else. No one said a word. That was the beauty of it. No one had to. The rebellion lived in the joints, in the measured lift of the shovel, in the calculated footstep across the snow, in the 2-second pause between commands. It was everywhere, and nowhere. One night, in the barracks, a man near the stove whispered, "This is what dignity looks like now." Another replied, "Dignity with dirt under its nails." You smiled. They weren't wrong, because this wasn't about winning. No one was escaping. No one was storming the gate. This was about not folding, not giving the machine your tempo, not letting the rhythm of cruelty dictate your limbs. This was a symphony of restraint, and it echoed in every corner of the camp. Even the dogs sensed it. They barked less, paced more. The wind, it seemed, grew quieter. You knew it wouldn't last. Nothing here does. But the knowledge that it happened, that it was possible, changed everything. It meant the camp hadn't eaten you entirely. Not yet. Because even in the absence of freedom, you had coordinated breath. You had rhythm. And rhythm, in a place built to destroy the soul, is a kind of freedom all its own. You noticed the new ones immediately. They come in quieter now. Not like you did. Not screaming and not crying and not asking questions. Just stunned. Eyes wide as her face is pale. Movements cautious, as if they know the ground might give way beneath them. You recognize that look. You wore it once. Now it's your turn to watch it from the other side. Their coats are too thin. Their boots don't fit. They sleep with their hands clenched in fist like they're still holding on to something. Some still believe they've been sent here by mistake. That someone, somewhere, will realize the error and open the gate. You don't tell them otherwise. Not yet. Let them keep that hope a few days longer. It might keep them alive long enough to grow something stronger in its place, but eventually they start asking, not about freedom, about survival. The first question is always the same. What's the rule? You answer slowly. Stay quiet. Move deliberately. Eat slowly. Trust carefully. And never, ever get sent to the medical barrack unless you're ready to die. They nod, but you can see their confusion. They want more. They want rules that feel like rules. Do this. Don't do that. They want structure. But this place is all grey. No straight lines. Only shifting sands and consequences that come late and hit hard. So you start small. You show them how to wrap their feet in dry cloth before bed. You teach them how to chew bread for minutes at a time to trick the stomach into feeling full. You help them understand how to hold a shovel so that the muscles tire evenly, not all at once. It isn't heroism, it's mechanics, like tuning a machine, and little by little, they begin to move differently. Less noise, less waste, more rhythm. You don't seek them out, but they come to you. Because in a world where no one explains anything, someone who speaks with calm is a lighthouse. Sometimes they offer you things buttons, scraps of tobacco, bits of clothes thanks. You never take them. Not because you're noble, but because teaching them isn't about gain. It's about preservation, of memory, of rhythm, of the invisible trail that got you this far. Because if you don't pass it on, it ends with you, and everything you've endured becomes meaningless. One night, a young man barely more than a boy sits beside you at the stove. He's shaking. "They made me clean the latrine with my hands," he says. His voice breaks. You don't flinch. You've done worse. "You'll never be asked to do that again," you say. He looks at you. How do you know? You stir the pot gently, watching the bubbles rise, because now you know where the bottom is. Is that supposed to help? Yes. While you look him in the eye, because once you know how far down things can go, you stop being surprised. He stares at the stove, then nods. You pass him a crust of bread. He doesn't thank you. He just eats it slowly. Good. He's learning. You remember Isaac's words, weeks ago, the ones who lust don't fight everything. They learn which walls matter, and now you pass those words on. Not by quoting, by modelling, by showing when to speak and when to shut up, when to step forward and when to disappear into the crowd. One day, one of the new ones shares a trick you didn't know, how to dry socks by tucking them against the small of your back while you work. You grin. Where'd you learn that my uncle, Siberian fisherman? You nod. Good uncle. That night, you try it. It works. And now you learn. The exchange is mutual now, not teacher and student. Just links in the same chain. Some mornings, you see them mimicking your walk, your cadence, your posture at roll call. They're becoming like you, but not broken, just adapted, like you. But they're still new, still fragile. Sometimes one breaks, and it's harder than it used to be. You feel it now, not just in your body, but in your spirit. You lose sleep, you stare longer at the ceiling, and you realize you've become responsible for them. Not officially, not by name, but by transmission. Because when you showed them how to wrap their feet and chew their bread and speak less and listen more, you gave them a little of your own endurance. And if they waste it, if they die, that endurance dies with them. You tell Isaac about this. He smirks. Congratulations, you're infected. With what continuity? You both chuckle, then go quiet, because it's true. You're no longer surviving for yourself. You're building a bridge, one memory at a time, one gesture at a time. And that, more than anything else, is how the Gulag loses. Not through escape, not through riots, but through quiet refusal to forget. To forget how to tie a knot, to forget how to share warmth, to forget how to speak a name out loud, even when no one else will remember it. The boy who cleaned the latrine now helps distribute tools in the morning. Another newcomer who once shook with hunger now rations his crust to share. One begins sketching again. In secret, you say nothing. You let him draw, because the next generation is not born in fire. It's passed on in steam, in breath, in silence. And in the camp, breath is precious, so is silence, so is memory. And now, memory lives in them, Long before sunrise, before the first shovel hits frozen earth or the soup begins to boil, the rules are already in motion. Not the guards' rules, not the quotas, not the rotating schedules or the punishments painted on wooden signs, but the other rules, the ones that no one writes down, the ones passed between men like breath on a cold morning quiet, brief, invisible unless you're looking for them. You first notice them by accident. Someone hands you a slice of bread cut not into halves, but into fifths, each piece so precisely divided you could mistake it for mathematics. You ask why. The cutter doesn't answer, but he does measure your silence. You learn the man who cuts the bread takes his piece last. It's not a suggestion. It's law. And if he cheats, if his slice is thicker, if someone gets the crust twice in a row, it's not the guards who punish him. It's everyone else. Not violently, but with exile. With silence. With the slow erasure of a face from the shared space. That's worse than cold. Worse than hunger. Because in the camp, you can survive a frostbitten toe, but you cannot survive becoming invisible. So the rule holds, the bread is cut in reverence, as if it were communion, and in a way it is. Another rule, if someone drops a spoon, you pick it up, no questions, no ownership, because spoons are life, they're not tools, they're continuity, no spoon, no soup, no body, so you pick it up, clean it, return it, not because you're kind, because that's the rule. Another, the last sip of tea is never gulped. You let it linger. You share the warmth with the man beside you, even if all that's left is heat rising from the rim of a tin mug. And another, never sit on someone else's bed, not even if they're dead, not until it's time. The bed holds a shape, a body, a story. You wait until the shape leaves of its own will, or until the barracks emptier marks the end with a blanket folded flat. Even then, you don't rush. You pause. You remember. That's the rule. You once thought these customs were just habits, survival mechanics. But over time, you begin to feel it, the weight of them, how they structure a world where structure has been ripped away. The guards enforce order with violence, but the prisoners enforce something older, something sacred, a code. It's not written in ink, it's written in behavior, like how to cough politely during circle, how to fold a rag before handing it to Isaac, how to trade a needle without needing to speak. You don't barter loudly here. You never say, I'll give you this for that. You show, you nod, you receive. A bent nail for a patch of felt, a button for 3 minutes near the stove, a thread of tobacco for silence in the night. These are not transactions, they are gestures, and over time, they begin to resemble liturgy. You see it in the way men light the stove. Always the same man, always the same motion, always the same 3 pieces of kindling, 1 long, 2 short. Not because it's efficient, because it's what's done. Because fire is not just heat here, it's memory, and every ritual surrounding it is part of the code. There's even a rule for death, when a man dies in the night, and he does. Often, his blanket is pulled up to his chin, not his forehead, just the chin. That's the signal. No alarm, no panic, just a shift in posture. By morning, someone has boiled water, another has folded the dead man's shirt, someone else carves a mark into the barrack wall a notch, small and angled, no names, just marks. But the marks are kept. Isaac once told you, we don't keep records, we keep presence. Presence. That's what the code protects. Not laws, not logic. The presence of self in relation to others. You begin to follow it without thinking. You fold your scarf the way your neighbour does. You place your boots on the same side of the bed every night. You tap your knuckles twice before taking your bread. And when a new man arrives, trembling, starving, half mad from the train, you don't greet him. You sit near him. You share space. That's the welcome. Later, you pass him a cloth. Dry. Soft. Torn from someone else's shirt. He takes it. No words. He understands. Is part of it now. You realise, with a kind of quiet awe. The camp has its rules, but the prisoners have tradition. And tradition in this place is more powerful than violence. It survives where violence burns out. It adapts. It shifts. But it holds. Because these small rituals, these quiet customs, are the last line of defence against becoming a thing. You're not just surviving, you're practicing, you're remembering. You're binding yourself to others not by command but by code. And the code is what makes you human. You find it beside the latrine, a leaf, not green, not full, just a fragment dried, veined, curled at the edge like a question mark. But it stops you cold. You crouch and pick it up carefully, as if touching something still breathing. There's nothing remarkable about it. No scent, no weight. But it holds a shape, a structure that wasn't made here, a memory that doesn't belong to the camp. You tuck it into your coat pocket, not because it is useful, not because it can be traded, because it feels like you. And for the rest of the day, your hand brushes against it in secret, like a secret handshake with yourself. Later, you press it between pages of an old ration slip and slide it under your mattress. You don't show anyone. You don't explain. But from that day on, you start to collect. Nothing large. Nothing that would draw attention. Just moments, images. Each day, you choose one. A line of smoke curling up from the stove. The way frost melts on a boot heel at noon. A reflection in water before someone steps through it. You don't write them down. You recite them silently. Store them behind your ribs. Some are colour, some are sound, some are gestures, a man fixing another's collar without speaking. A smile exchanged in passing, almost by mistake. It becomes your practice, not a ritual, not superstition, just a choice to keep something every day, no matter how broken it feels. Because here, survival is often just endurance, but endurance without memory is hollow. You've seen it in the eyes of others. Men who eat, sleep, march, but whose eyes are blank, as if they've buried their past for efficiency. And maybe they live longer, but you're not sure they live better. So you begin to teach the others, quietly. You tell a boy beside you, pick one thing each day to remember. Not important, just real. He nods. A week later, he shows you a stone, smooth, oval, barely larger than a thumbnail. Feels like my brother's worry stone, he whispers. You nod. He keeps it in his shoe. A woman near the infirmary begins braiding thread into a loop and tying it around her wrist. A different colour each week. From where? You don't know. But you never ask. It's not about the object. It's about the intention. The resistance of saying this thing happened. I saw it. I chose to keep it. Because when the camp demands everything, your body, your name, your tempo, memory is the only thing that must be offered to be taken, and you don't offer it. Not anymore. You choose to hoard it. To hoard sunlight, the sound of melting snow, the way Isaac clears his throat before lying, the smell of juniper from his rags. You start marking your bunk with tiny carvings, one for each memory. A petal, a crack, a thread. Someone notices. They add their own. A fish, a shoe, a moon. Soon. The bunk becomes a mural, and not beautiful and but lived. A record of people who chose to remember instead of disappear. One day, a guard asks what it means. You shrug. Old habit. He shakes his head and moves on. You don't explain. He wouldn't understand. Because memory, in this place, isn't about sentiment. It's about space. Mental space. Spiritual space. You remember, one morning, watching sunlight break through a crack in the wall and fall across a man's hands. And for a moment, you thought, if I can remember that light, I can survive one more day. And you did, and then another, and now. You choose memory the way others choose sleep, as medicine, as armor. You even begin to draw again, with coal, on stone, with a stick in dirt, not landscapes, not faces, shapes, from dreams, from kitchens long gone, from book covers and embroidery patterns and the inside of a childhood coat. You show one to Isaac. He nods. Good. Why? Because if we forget everything, we become like them. You understand what he means. The system doesn't just want to break you. It wants to turn you into something efficient, replaceable, clean. It wants your memory to be one long blank hallway. No pictures, no handprints, no story. So you build your gallery in secret, behind your eyes, on your bones, inside the shelter of things no one else can see. And each time someone dies, you take one thing from their memory. A saying, a prayer, a nickname, a favourite colour. You pass it on, not as history, but as resistance. Because here, in the heart of forgetting to remember, is to refuse. You see it before he speaks. The look in his eyes. That stunned, half-blank gaze like someone who's just stepped off a boat onto a foreign shore, too dizzy from motion to know which way is land. He's standing in the doorway of the barrack, thin, pale, dirty in a way that's too clean, like someone who hasn't been here long enough to accumulate the grime that means you've settled in. His hands are empty, not in the literal sense. He holds the same sack of state-issued rations, the same standard-issue boots, cracked at the toe, but his posture betrays him. He doesn't know how to carry himself yet. That's how you can tell a new prisoner. They still stand like civilians, back too straight, shoulders not yet curled inward, eyes that still scan for justice. He reminds you of yourself, months ago, or was it years? Time here is liquid, viscous, heavy in places, evaporated in others. You don't know how long it's been, but you remember that version of yourself vividly. The first time you were handed a spoon and didn't know how to guard it. The first time you slept with your coat on and still froze. The first time you looked into the face of a man dying slowly and realized no one was coming to stop it. You remember the ache, the panic that flared for a few days, then flattened into something harder. You remember the bargaining, the questions that went unanswered, the body learning its limits, the mind learning how to dull itself just enough. And now watching this new Manu feel something flicker in your chest. Not pity, not fear, something quieter, recognition. The room doesn't welcome him, not because it's cruel, because it's full of people who know what happens when you reach too fast toward the newly arrived, people who have learned to conserve their mercy, ration it like sugar. But tonight, you feel different. You stand, walk over, say nothing. You gesture toward the stove. He follows. You sit. You hand him a chipped tin cup filled with water warmed from your rationed snowpot. He takes it like it might be poison, sniffs, then drinks, and breathes. "Thank you," he whispers. You nod. "You'll need better boots," you say. "They gave me these. They're not for walking. They're for proving something to the people who gave them to you." He doesn't smile, but the corner of his mouth twitches. "You've been here long." You pause. "Long enough." He nods. Doesn't ask more. Good. He's already learning. That night, he sleeps in the bunk across from yours. He doesn't know to use a cloth for his feet, doesn't know the soup line rhythm, doesn't know who to speak to, or how much. So you show him, quietly, no lectures, just placement, a shared glance when it's time to move, a raised eyebrow when he forgets to watch for the bucket in the path. He begins to mimic your pace, and soon, others begin to watch him, and by watching him, they remember you. Not the you of now, the you of then, and you realize helping him is not for his sake. Not really, it's for you. Because if you forget that version of yourself, the scared, tired, shivering shadow, you lose the line that connects who you were to who you still might be. You realize something else, too. You haven't beaten the camp. No one does. The idea of surviving Gulag implies an end, a clean exit. But survival isn't a gate that opens. It's a practice, a daily choice, a repeated refrain, and you've learned to sing it quietly. You wake up, you wrap your feet, you drink your water slow, you chew your bread thoughtfully. You notice the light, how it moves, how it fails. You collect a memory a day. You nod to Isaac, you listen for poems. You trace the grooves in the wall with your thumb. You make sure the man next to you still speaks at least once a day. You do these things not because they lead anywhere, but because if you stop doing them, you disappear. Not die, disappear. Like a line erased from paper so cleanly no one even knows it was ever written. That's what the camp does best. Not kill, but erase. Erase names, erase habits, erase language. And then, once your silence is absolute, it lets your body go. But you haven't been erased yet, and you won't be, because every act of kindness, nusked, quiet, unsentimental is a sentence scratched into the wall of history. I was here. I remained. And the new prisoner, he starts to learn. He picks up cues faster now. He watches your hands when you eat. He starts chewing slower. He starts folding his blanket the way you do. He kneels to fix another man's boot, even though no one asked. You see it, and you let him. Because now, he's building something too. A rhythm, a code, a memory, and one day, hell see someone new come through the gate, and hell recognize the face. And when he does, hell do what you did, and what someone else once did for you. Because in the end, that's what endurance really is. Not strength, not luck. Transmission. Memory passed from hand to hand in silence, like a flame, cupped and protected from wind, like a name whispered into darkness so it won't be lost. You don't expect applause. You don't expect rescue. You don't expect justice. But you do expect yourself. And that, in this place, is everything. The dream comes for the first time during the third snow melt. Not like other dreams, those fragmentary flickers of old kitchens and nameless voices. This one is lucid, crisp, vivid, whole. You're walking down a dirt path. The wind is warm, dry. There's no snow, no boots. You're barefoot, and you're not alone. Men walk beside you. Some you know, some you don't. Isaac walks ahead, muttering about tree sap and sea salt. The boy who once hummed lullabies trails behind, tracing invisible notes in the air with his fingers. The man with the violin plays, and this time you hear every note clear, unwavering, forgiven. And there's someone else too. You. Not the you now. Not even the you before. A version of you who never came here. Still soft in the face. Still believing in mornings. This version doesn't speak. Just watches you, as if waiting to see who you've become. When you wake, your throat aches from something unsaid. And something inside you is burning, not grief. Not hunger. Yearning. It's dangerous. Because in the Gulag, hope isn't medicine. It's fire. Uncontrolled. It consumes. But tame-channeled it warms. So you keep the dream, you carry it, and slowly, others begin to speak of similar things. One man saw his daughter, another smelled his wife's hair again. Another dreamed of standing in a market and choosing which apple to buy. It wasn't the apple that mattered, he said. It was choosing. And for the first time, you realize you're all dreaming again. Not of escape, of agency, of moments where the world bends, not around quotas or fences, but desire. So you start a practice. Each night, as you lie in your bunk, you ask yourself a question. Where would I go if I could? Sometimes the answer is a lake. Sometimes it's a room filled with books. Sometimes it's just a bench, and no one asking anything of you. You tell this to the younger ones. They listen. Soon, they begin sharing. Small things. One imagines baking bread not for food, but for the smell. Another dreams of sewing, of the way cloth feels when it folds just right. And in the barrack, after the stove dims, men begin to whisper their escapes aloud. Not loudly, just enough. Today, I imagined eating soup without counting the spoons. I saw the sea again. It was green. I was in my mother's garden. The carrots were crooked. You begin to realize what's happening. Not delusion, not madness, a quiet rebellion of imagination. Because if they can't control your dreams, if they can't ration your mind, then you are not fully theirs. And in the most brutal of winters, when your hands are cracked and your feet are bleeding inside frozen boots, that knowledge keeps you alive. But it does more than that. It begins to change how you behave. A man who dreams of music starts tapping rhythms on the side of his tin cup. A woman who dreams of ink begins etching symbols into bread crust before eating. A boy who dreams of grass makes a string of knots and tells everyone it's a necklace from someone he loved. The guards don't see it, or they do and mistake it for madness. But you know, this is sanity. This is sovereignty. This is the only part of you they'll never catalogue, measure, or erase. Your inner country, your memory maps, your private seasons. And one day, when a man collapses in the field and the others hesitate, you rush forward. Not because it's brave, but because in your imagined world, you're still the person who helps. You become the imagined you. And that becomes real. That becomes act. That becomes legacy. Because survival is not always in the body. Sometimes it's in the mind rehearsing freedom, even when the feet are shackled. And if you can imagine enough a meal, a hand, a letter, a name, then maybe, just maybe, when the gates open, if they ever do, the Gulag doesn't end with a key. There is no sudden crack of sunlight, no triumphant music, No gates flung open in celebration. There is only the day they stop calling your number, the day your name buried somewhere beneath a mountain of ledgers resurfaces, blurry and mispronounced, like something wet pulled from ice. You pack slowly, not because there's much to carry, because you're not sure what should stay, or what, if anything, ever truly belonged to you in here. The boots were borrowed, the coat traded twice, the bunk shared, haunted, stained with sleep and sorrow. You look once more at the wall you scratched notches carved for days survived, for men remembered, for small victories only you know how to count. You brush your hand across it, lightly, as if saying goodbye to your own shadow. Outside, it's snowing again. Familiar, not cruel, not kind, just present. The guards don't speak. They mark your release mechanically, like adjusting an inventory log, as if subtracting a crate. You walk, past the fence, past the towers, past the place where the man with the violin once stood and gave the yard 10 minutes of humanity. You keep walking, and as you do, you feel something strange. You expect joy, relief, tears, maybe. But what comes is silence, a deep, resounding silence, because you know you didn't escape. You carried the camp with you, in your hands, your lungs, your memories. You carry the names of those who never left. You carry their poems, their coughs, their final dreams whispered to you on nights when sleep felt too dangerous. And now you are free. But freedom doesn't feel like wings. It feels like weight, the weight of remembering and the responsibility that comes with it. Because if you forget, if you let it all drift into ash, then the camp wins. And so, you don't. You remember. Every rule passed in silence. Every man who taught you how to wrap your feet. Every face that flickered and then faded, but once called you by your name. You walk further. The snow thins, the air shifts. The wind, once bitter, carries the scent of thaw, and still deep in your chest. Beneath the layers of cold and memory and bone you remain, not whole, not unbroken, but present. And for now, that is enough. That is survival. That is the quiet, enduring defiance of those who lived and remembered. You walk away from the camp, not far, not yet. You still feel it under your skin. Still hear the shovel strikes when it's too quiet. Still sleep with your hands clenched, like you're holding the invisible ration ticket they never gave back. You're technically free now, but you find yourself stopping at every sound. You ration your bread without thinking. You count footsteps, days, the number of words you say before someone interrupts. You catch yourself waiting for someone to give you permission to sit, to stand, to speak, and no one does. Because you're not there anymore, but part of you still is. And so you keep walking. Because if you stop now, you'll sink into the frost just like the others, and you promised yourself you would remember. Even if it hurts, especially because it hurts. You pass through villages. One has a bakery. The smell makes you sick. Another has a school. Children run past you, their boots clean, their voices loud. It's too much. You duck into an alley and sit behind a pile of coal sacks, shaking, somewhere. A woman laughs. You realize you haven't heard real laughter in years, not the desperate kind or not the bitter kind, but the warm kind, the kind with colour. You don't join them, but you remember it. You tuck it into your coat, like a stolen button, like a slice of spring, like a poem. You start collecting again. Not scraps this time, not twine or beet peels, but stories. You meet a woman who was in Vorkuta. She hid books under the floorboards, pages torn out of Pushkin, rewritten by hand onto cigarette paper and stitched into her undergarments with wire. She called it her second skin. You meet a man who remembers every detail of the inside of the punishment box, but not his son's name. You meet a boy, 18, born in the camp, never saw a city. He thought snow that came through broken roofs was normal. You ask him what he dreams of. I dream of walls that don't listen, he says. You start writing things down, not names, not crimes, just moments. A hand that trembled before it passed you the last crust. The sound of someone whispering poetry into a tin cup. The way Isaac's eyes softened just before he lied to a dying man to help him sleep. You don't write for justice. Justice is for countries. You write for memory. And because if someone else ever finds this another prisoner, another child of silence, another listener at the edge of forgetting, they'll know someone survived. Not just the body, but the person. And you know this isn't the end. There are more stories to tell of the women's barracks, where secrets were passed in the seams of menstrual cloths, where love letters were written with fishbone dipped in blood, where children were born in winter and wrapped in rags that still smelled of their mother's sweat and metal, of the workplace wives assigned like shovels, shared like soup. And what happened when someone said no, of the political poets who memorized entire books and passed them on line by line, bunk by bunk, until every verse lived across a dozen mouths, because paper could burn, but rhythm could travel, of the mothers who went in whole and came out without their names, of the men who betrayed others just once and never spoke again,